Hey, what's up, guys? Lou here, and welcome to another episode of Deciphered, the podcast where we take cryptic and confusing topics and, bring them back down a size for your viewing or listening pleasure. This topic in particular is going to be a history talk, and I'll do my best trying not to bore you guys, because I know it could be long, and I'm going to make it short, sweet, hopefully, no promises, but I'm doing my best. And on a side note, this is all part of a series I'm going to be doing, pretty much, describing various different groups of people and how they're all kind of interrelated. It's my attempt to, just bring people together, relate to different cultures and whatnot, and just, explain to you guys that, despite being in a world divided right now because of our poor leadership, as a race of people, all races, we all come from pretty much the same basin of civilization. And this is kind of bridging the gaps between that. Now, without any further time to get to the main topic here, Eurasian Steppe people. Now, why are they important? Why the heck am I talking about them? Well, I'm going to get into that. Basically, Eurasia. It's a, combination of words, Europe and Asia. To understand what that's all about, think of Central Asia. Central Asia being places like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, a whole lot of stands. Now, in the not-so-distant past, Russia kind of had a grip on these countries, and, as communism fell, these countries gained their independence back, and, establish their own governments and whatnot. Well, this isn't about the modern time. This is about the past and, who these people were and how they influenced everyone else. And one way or another, they were all interconnected by this thing called the Silk Road. And basically, the Silk Road is this long stretch of land that's, bridging the gap between East and West. East being places like, Persia, Mongolia, China, and, the West being, Europe, the Caucasus, and, the area surrounding there. And you had traders from both civilizations going through these, ways around the Silk Road and meeting up and exchanging goods. So you had people from, China, Mongolia, all over there, meeting up with people in Europe, and vice versa, Europeans meeting with these, different tribes, and, it was like shopping in an international market, pretty much. Now, more about the steppe people. Who were they? Okay, so you got a bunch of tribes here. Think of, Scythians, Huns, Mongolians, these were all, descendants and, people that, lived or farmed in these areas. These people were nomads. They traveled on horseback, and they lived off the land. The Scythians, for example, were actually really, really great warriors. Respectively, everyone else in that region were very good warriors. They, they took on massive empires like, Persia, Assyria, Babylon, and won a great deal of victories. Now, while some of these civilizations faded out, they didn't disappear entirely. They pretty much migrated. The people intermarried with other regions from the Caucasus and Eastern Europe, like the Slavs, for example. Slavic people, Hungarians, Bulgarians, most of the people around, Eastern Europe, all share a, similar DNA to these people from the steppes. Now, aside from being great warriors and horseback riders, well, they cultivated the lands pretty well. They they knew what to do with very little, and make it work for them, pretty much. Now, aside from being assimilated into other, groups of civilization, a lot of them prospered by themselves and developed into empires of their own. The Mongols, for example, I don't think they need an explanation on how, great they achieved, and, to this day, there's, descendants of Genghis Khan. I mean, if your average Mongolian were to take a blood test, I'm sure he could trace his roots to the original people and maybe even the Khan himself. Yes, he got around like that. Attila the Hun, his short-lived empire, and to an extent the Bulgarians, the Bulgars. These people, didn't quite look like the people you would see today, the modern Hungarians or Bulgarians. They had more Oriental features, I guess. I'm trying to say, like, Asiatic, maybe. And by intermarrying with, other people from the Caucasus and Eastern Europe, they, developed into the people we see today. Now, moving on, fast forwarding to the future a little bit, not too into the future, but what makes them, prevalent today? What, why are they special? Why am I talking about them? Well, like I said, aside from, influencing and integrating with other societies, and even competing on a massive level with, the heavy hitters such as Rome, Greece, Russia, religion. So obviously they were, being a tribe people, they had their own gods, just like the Romans did, just like the Greeks did, so on and so forth, But the intermingling with other cultures, other things start to flourish. Being in that particular region, some of it was Eastern Christianity, Orthodoxy. The Greeks introduced to that. You had Buddhism, which was introduced by the Chinese. And then finally, which is actually still prevalent in that area today, Islam. Now, as time went on, the Mongols being, the real big, tribe that got out of the steppes and, just pretty much traveled everywhere you could think of. Their, later descendants of the Khans were, converts of Islam. And, wherever usually they established, so did the religion take place. So you have all these connective, different types of peoples, pretty much all under the same umbrella of, whatever religion they followed. In this case, being Islam. Aside from the Khans, you had the Turks, and the Turks being these nomadic steppe people, just like everyone else I described, and developing into a massive powerhouse, pretty much. So they started out horseback people, and then developed into what we now know today as the Turks. Before the Turks was the Ottomans. So you had the Ottomans develop, from these people. And, obviously they embraced Islam and just conquered, great epic countries that you would think would last forever. But no, they pretty much, I guess, took what they knew from their ancestors and developed it into a, like a powerhouse. Thus spreading their culture as far away as Africa, the Middle East. It was incredible. You had Mongolians, they settled in parts of the Middle East, and, the Turks settling in parts of Africa, and just, bringing, that part of the world together in a sense. Whether it be by force or by choice, there was always opportunity to be had. And there you go. So, my conclusion here, these Central Asian steppe people of the mountains, pretty much, started out like any other, primitive civilization. Hunting, gathering, developing. But what became of that was civilizations that lasted for centuries, influenced other people of the region, and some still thrive today. Just because we all came from somewhere else doesn't mean at some time in history we were all interconnected in one way or another. You're probably wondering how they talked, how they communicated. Were they, related in that sense to, other peoples? Yes and no. Just like the religion, how it was, set to pretty much whatever you believed in, whatever tribe you came from. The languages were influenced or, developed to other languages that we know today. For example, the Scythians were part of a Iranian Indo-European group. The Indo-Europeans being people from, Turkey, part of the Caucasus, and I'll get into them a little later. They're part of my trilogy here, but back to the steppe people. Languages, yes, like I said, some spoke a East Iranian language, which doesn't really exist today, but you could think of it as a Indo-European language, in that branch. So, they could probably understand people from across the border. While others spoke a Uralian Mongolic language that, all originated in these areas. Despite being from the same area, there was diversity. Like I mentioned before, some had more Asian features than others. Others had a more, European, I guess, I don't want to say Middle Eastern because that's really, really far off, but Persian, look about them. While others kind of remind you of modern-day Mongols or Chinese. We all had their groups and tribes, like I said before, the Bulgars, Alans, Avars, Khazars, Crimeans, and so on and so forth. They all developed into different cultures that still, go on today. But at the same time, they were just as diverse as they were unified. I mean, pretty much, like neighbors, Some people may or may not consider, Ukrainians, Russians the same, or Siberians and Russia. I mean, they all live in generally the same area, but some of them speak, different languages. They can probably understand each other, through one way or another, but, you get the idea. Distant cousins, put it that way. You can only imagine living there during this time, during this era of the past. Just like it is today, not much has changed. The landscape is beautiful. Picture mountains, some snow-capped, some dry. Very, large landmass, a lot of greenery, a lot of trees, and some desert. But all relatively the same as it was, yesteryear. It goes for today. It looks practically the same. Somebody wanted to know what it looked like, back then. Look at pictures of, the steppe mountains, Kazakhstan, Russia, Siberia. It all relatively looks the same as it did back then. It is now. I'm going to leave it there and pick it up the next time I produce one of these. And as for next time, I'll be talking about the people of the Caucasus. Georgians, Armenians, and people from around that region. And by Caucasus, I don't mean Caucasians, white people, even though these people, come in all different shades from really, pale to olive-skinned. No, Caucasus is just another group of people in another part of the world. I'll be explaining to you why I think they're relevant today and just as important as any other civilization. And their contributions to other cultures in the area. Thanks again for listening, and hope you guys learned something. So until next time, ciao, goodbye.